Hey, I'm your host Moru, and this is Budokai Z Before You Buy. Today, I'm going to be breaking down what the game actually feels like to play, show some gameplay, help you decide if it's worth your time or your Robux. Timestamps, the Discord, and the game link are all down below in the description. Alright, start off with first impressions and character setup. Right when you load in, you're greeted with a character selection screen. At first, you got like 4 races to choose from, which, might feel a little limited, but there are actually more races locked behind a spin system. But here's the catch. Race spins, they cost Robux. You do get a free race and gene spin when you start a new slot, which is nice, but after that, if you're not spending money, you're mostly relying on codes, which means waiting for updates since, they're not out yet. That said, the system feels, somewhat fair. It's not overly aggressive, but it's definitely there. Customization, overall, pretty solid. You got a good amount of options. You can make your character feel unique without too much effort. Alright, moving on to Monetization and Balance. Surprisingly, the game isn't really heavily pay to win. Even though there are paid elements like spins, most races and buffs, feel relatively balanced. You're not completely locked out of competing if you're free to play. It just might take longer. There's also no hunger system, which is, pretty nice. Instead, food gives buffs, which adds a bit of strategy without being annoying. You can kind of like min-max like your gains. And, as I'm putting on screen right here, feel free to pause. Here's what some of the food does. And moving on to progression and systems. This is where the game really opens up. Most of the content's here, which, can be a little overwhelming at first. The skill tree. Skill tree is very clean and easy to navigate. You can upgrade abilities by actually using them, which, improves things like damage, cooldowns, and key cost. Stats work as multipliers instead of flat boost, which makes progression feel more meaningful over time. As for gaining battle power, there's a lot of methods. I mean, a lot. There's shadow sparring for so slow over time passive gains. You can fight stronger players to leech gains. You get a little bit of their battle power without them actually losing it. You just get a small portion of it. Sparring bosses like Broly and Beerus, but you have to do their quests first, which might be a little hard at the beginning. Training at the gym and doing daily quests. Using the hyperbolic time chamber and the gravity chamber. However, hyperbolic time chamber, you only have 3 uses per slot. Not a count, just slot. And then you can do raids, which give you Z points, which are used to, upgrade your stats and also boost your power level. And you get that from raids, story progression, and fighting Broly and Beerus. And story progression is the last one you can do. There's no short of ways to get stronger, but the game doesn't always explain them clearly, so newer players might feel a bit lost at first. Here's some sneaks. The map design of this game, already really fleshed out. And, it looks pretty good, and that's pre-revamp. This is what it looks like coming out in the next update. I mean, this looks beautiful. And here's some of the VFX. They're getting, fixed and stuff. It's looking amazing, honestly. I do really recommend this game. Gameplay and modes. Alright, this is where it gets pretty cool. Hardcore mode. It's a really cool addition to this game. It's not permadeath. All you do is lose, 10% of your battle power when you die after 3 times. It's kind of like, it's called wiping in this game, which adds real tension without being overly punishing. You also get a 1.25 boost to battle power gain, so it's worth it. And there's also some non-combat activities, but really not many. There's farming and selling items, upgrading gear with caution shards, which you get from using the forge system, completing quests, and that said, this is also where the game starts to feel a bit thin. The community and the replay value in this game. The community is honestly one of the better parts of this game. We're not being hunted. Players are usually willing to help, especially helping new players. Just listen to them. They know what they're doing. There's also an entire faction system in-game and the Discord server. There's a whole bounty hunter system, which even some factions you can join. All you gotta do is talk to Hit on Vampa while having 0 bounty. You become a bounty hunter. Moderation in this game is pretty laid back. Discord's really active, which helps keep the game alive. While the downsides are deep, the actual content doesn't always keep up. Once you've explored the main progression paths, there's not a ton to do beyond, grinding and repeating activities. It does start to feel a bit repetitive, especially in the late game. Just take your stuff slow. Don't min-max everything. We got all these planets right here I'm showing off right now. And you basically spawn at one of these, right? Few races can just fly up in the sky, but you do kind of need to buy a space pod, which has you do quests at the beginning. Might feel a little bit daunting, but you honestly get out of there pretty fast. It's only 1,500, and you kind of start with 1,000, which lets you go to Earth to start your storyline. Here's our total pros and cons list. We got pros. Solid character customization. multiple progression paths. You're never stuck doing one thing. Skill tree, it's clean and satisfying to upgrade. The game's not heavily pay to win. There's an active and helpful community. And hardcore mode adds meaningful challenge to the game. Here's some of the cons. Race spin system is still tied to Robux. Progression systems can feel overwhelming at first. The game doesn't explain mechanics very well. Content gets repetitive in the late game, and not a ton of variety outside of core grinding loops. Budokai Z has a lot of depth, especially for a Roblox game. The progression systems are solid, and there are plenty of ways to get stronger. At the same time, it can feel a bit grindy and confusing early on. And it's also lacking in long-term content. If you're into stat grinding and Dragon Ball progression, you'll probably get a lot out of it. If you're looking for constant new content and variety, you might want to wait a bit for future updates.